Hey y'all, my name is Shauna. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my top 10 of 2020. This top 10 includes middle grade, young adult, and adult fiction. I had a good reading year this year. I read over 300 books. Like, of course, the majority of those are probably going to be manga, but I did actually read a lot of adult books and young adult books this year. I have I didn't read as much nonfiction or middle grade as I would have wanted, but that's okay. So let's just go ahead and see what I chose for my best of 2020. Okay, so the first book on my list is The Forgotten Girl by India Hill Brown. And this is a middle grade story following Iris, who ends up going into this kind of alcove in a forest after the first snow with her best friend, and they decide to make snow angels, but then they uncovered the headstone of a young girl their age who died, whose name was Avery. And after that, some spooky stuff starts happening. Her window starts being open. She starts waking up outside. Iris and Daniel decide that they want to find out who Avery is. So for a school project, they decide to do research, and they find out that Avery is a young girl who was buried in a black cemetery, because back then, when segregation was really prominent, they also segregated graveyards. So this is an abandoned black cemetery. Absolutely love the historical aspect of it. Like, I love seeing young kids kind of chase after what's going on. I also really just enjoyed the spooky aspect of it. Like, it's really spooky. Avery's this ghost who's really upset because she wants a new BFF, and she wants Iris to be her new BFF. But obviously, Iris can't be her new BFF if unless you're going to kill her. So yeah, this is a book that I really, really enjoyed. Like, I absolutely loved it. It got me more interested in my city's segregation, and do we have segregated graveyards, and we did, and it's just really interesting to kind of see that. But yeah, absolutely loved this middle grade story. So the next book on my 2020 list is Jackpot by Nick Stone. This follows a young girl named Rico who is currently a high school senior, and she's also working at a gas station part time to save up money to pay for bills due to her mother's chronic illness, and her mother also kind of living beyond their means a little bit. Enrique also has no aspirations to go to college due to the money troubles. They can't even get insurance, so they have to be really careful of what they choose to do and what they choose to spend their money on. This book follows Rico after she sells a ticket on Christmas Eve to an elderly lady, and it turns out that ticket is the winning ticket. So Rico goes on this journey with one of her schoolmates that she slowly starts to befriend, and he's this kind of pampered boy, but he also has a lot to deal with the fact that his dad doesn't really support him in his dreams of what he wants to do. He wants him to take over the family business, and it's not as cut and dry as Rico think it is. But this book was really emotional. Like, Nick Stone knows how to write really emotional characters. So for me, I could not put this book down when I started reading it, and I just really enjoyed Rico's character. I enjoyed the moments that she has with her younger brother, and there's a hospital scene towards the end that just floors me and makes me so upset. But yeah, I wish more people wouldn't sleep on Nick Stone, because Nick Stone is a prolific black young adult and middle grade author. So definitely get into some of the writing. So the next book I have is another young adult contemporary, and that is Not So Pure or Simple by Lamar Gills. So this is a book following Dell. He is a typical teenage male, but he also has a kind of like unseedy reputation of being a guy that kind of being a player basically, and he is pining after his childhood crush, who has always been unavailable, always has a partner until she finally breaks up with her longtime partner and decides to join the church's purity pledge. And Dell, not really paying attention, winds up volunteering to be part of this purity pledge. Now has to kind of be a little fake and get his crush to love, like him for something that he's not. And I just this is just a powerful impact of like being true to yourself, and how, you know, even the guys who say they're good aren't really good. But yeah, this book really tackles the nice guy trope about how even if you have the goodest intentions in your mind, if you don't get what you want, you suddenly turn into an asshole. So, yeah, Lamar Gills is not afraid to write characters that are unlikable. And I just really enjoyed this story. Like, it really got me, especially when his friend says, Dell, who told you you were nice? Like, that's something you built up in your head, not the other way around. I just really love this book. Like, I like contemporaries that have that kind of bit of drama, but not like that over the top drama, but just the typical drama that you see at everyday school settings. So yeah, I would definitely give Lamar Gills a try. Like, so many people are sleeping on him. He has written some really good books. So I would definitely give him a try. And also, this cover is just freaking awesome. Okay, so the next book I have is Pet by Akweki MZ, and this follows Jam, whose mother is an artist, and one day mother kind of gets into this frenzy of painting this picture, and when she's done, she tells Jam not to go in and look at it, but Jam, being curious, does go in and look at it, but they end up cutting their their hand and getting blood on the painting, and then what happens there is that he basically summoned this creature who calls themselves an angel, but it's really monstrous. And so Jam decides to call the creature, call it Pet, and Pet tells them someone close to them is experiencing some bad, like someone is hurting someone close to them. So they decide to go and kind of go on a spy mission. This book also critiques utopian societies. Like, Jam lives in a utopia society where the people claim there are no more bad things. You know, there's no more people harming you, there's no more drugs, there's nothing. This book kind of says, you know, on the surface it looks like there's nothing, but there is stuff in the background. And this book, it has a wide variety of diverse characters. Like, his friend has free parents, and they all communally live together, and then they also have other family members living with them. Like, the conversations Jam has with Pet are just so mind-boggling, and as Jam continues their studies into angels, they try to figure out, like, you know, the angels that came from before got rid of all the bad stuff, well, why are they coming around now? This fun fantasy story, and I just really enjoyed it. It's pretty thin, and it's just such a fast-paced read too. Like, I couldn't get enough of Jam and their interactions with their parents. Like, I read this book earlier this year and it's still kind of stuck with me, and it's definitely one that I want to reread again. So the next book I have is a memoir, and this is by Dee Watkins. It is called The Cook-Up, a crack rock memoir. And Dee Watkins is a prominent figure in the Baltimore area. He teaches at one of our local universities, and he's also been really big into educated the young adults in the city. When it was announced that one of his books would be chosen as our big, like, one Baltimore read, I decided that I also wanted to read more by him, so I ended up picking up The Cook-Up, which is his memoir about after his brother was shot, how he took up the drug trade. And Dee Watkins is a smart man. He on track to go to Georgetown University and ended up kind of like giving all that up to keep the family business going. And humor in it, but it also has some serious topics in it. Nothing is taken lightly with this offer. And I listened to the audiobook, and it's I believe it was read by him, and it was just such an impactful book. And it's about like the drug trade and redemption, and then when he meets this woman who kind of changes his viewpoints, and he wants to change himself for the better. It's just a book that feels so ingrained in the city, and it was just so good. Like, I want to read more Baltimorean fiction and Baltimorean books. But yeah, I just really wanted to read this. This is a book that I've been seeing some of the library patrons come out to check out. It sounds very interesting, because you wouldn't think that this kind of book could be written, but it is. And most people don't seek those kind of stories out because they feel like that they won't get it. It's like Timothy Watkins is very relatable. His redemption is very, you know, powerful, and it's a book that will probably keep going on for years to come, and I think it needs to be out there. After I listened to that book, I picked up Homegoing by Yagi Yasi, and this is probably like one of my top 5 2020 reads. This is a historical fiction multi-generational story. Two sisters that share the same parent, and one is sold into slavery and one is taken as a bride to one of the British men that are occupying her town. Like, it's very interesting because the sisters do kind of cross paths at one point, because when the one sister that is captured during a raid at her village is taken to the castle, you know, they're in the same spot and you think, oh, maybe they'll meet, but they don't. And so each chapter is a parallel storyline between the two sisters and their generation, their lineage. Such a tale of colonialism, slavery, American history. You know, you have the gold rush, you have the American Civil War, then you have the Jazz Age. There's just so much going on in this book, so much talks about, you know, racial and social and economical struggles and stuff. And it, like, this was just so good. Like, just a story about how people that are still living in Ghana and people that were taken from Ghana, and how it's just a troubling time for both of them, because the people that stayed at Ghana, you know, obviously had to deal with colonialism, and then the people that were taken, were stolen from Ghana, obviously dealt with, you know, slave masters and stuff over in the West. And it's heavy, but it's a good read. And this was their debut novel, and I have their second novel, The Transcendent Kingdom, that I'll read sometime this year. But I would definitely recommend picking this book up because it is a fast read. It's not that big, and it's really important to read stories outside of the Western lens. So the next book I read was Well Met by Jen DeLuca, and this is a contemporary rom-com with our main character. She went back to her hometown to take care of her sister after her sister had broken her leg, and she's basically chauffeuring her young niece around. And when her young niece was to do the Renaissance fair that summer, the sister is kind of roped into it because the niece needs a guardian. She kind of takes the whole Renaissance fair as a light, fun summer activity to do. She doesn't get too serious about it, and that ticks off one of the organizers of the event, which is our love interest. And him and his brother started up this Renaissance festival. You know, he gets ticked off that she doesn't take it too seriously. She gets ticked off that he takes it way too seriously. But when they get in their characters, they're fun and they're flirty, and they seem to connect. And as the summer goes on and they connect more, they slowly start to fall into a relationship. And it's also like a small town relationship, which is like everybody knows your business. And that's kind of something that our main character is trying to get away from. She doesn't want a small town life. This was just a fun little romance for me to read, so I'm not too, like, it's one of my favorites because my sister was a big Renaissance fan and she loved dressing up and acting out and stuff like that. Like, that was her thing to do during the summer and fall when we had it here in the States. So it just made me a little emotional just because it reminded me of the good times I have with my sister. Going to the Renaissance Festival, walking around and just enjoying the actors. So the next book I have is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this is a horror Gothic tale about a young girl whose cousin ends up marrying this Englishman and moving into their big mansion, but her cousin is slowly getting sick. Our main character's father says, hey, why don't you go out there and figure out what's going on. So she goes out there and she kind of feels unwelcome by her cousin's in-laws, and it kind of just takes off from there. Like, Naomi's this smart character. She slowly starts to figure out that there's something, you know, weird going on in this house, and just all around horror in it. The vivid dreams that Naomi has while she's in the house are pretty horrific. especially towards the middle and end of the book as she slowly starts to uncover the in-laws' secrets. If I didn't like mushrooms before, I really don't like them now because they feed off of dead things and they're even worse in this book and they glow and I don't like that. So yeah, I thought this was a really fun historical horror. I mean, who doesn't like a nice little horror with a side of pus? Okay, so the next book I read was Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, and this is a Griffith family drama following the suicidal death of their eldest daughter, but nobody knows why the daughter was out in the lake and what happened. And some people are like, this isn't a suicide, this was a murder. So it kind of goes into that, but it also goes into the family's dark secrets that they're hiding behind their closed doors. And there's infidelity, also trigger warning for suicide and racism and racial slurs, so just be aware of that. But I just really enjoyed this book. I just kind of really interested in how like part of most of the story is kind of told in this third person kind of point of view, whereas like this onlooker is looking in, and I just really enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed Celeste Ng's writer style. Like, just seeing the family deal with their grief in their own way. Yeah, so I just really enjoyed. I like family, dark, emotional drama, and that's exactly what Celeste Ng gives us in this book. Okay, and my last favorite read for 2020 was Bayou Magic by Jill Parker Rhodes. This is a middle grade novel following Maddie, who is the youngest child. She has other older sisters, and every summer one of the sisters has to go down and spend the summer months with her grandmother in the bayou. And at first she's kind of missing her home life, missing the city life, but she slowly starts to realize that she becomes more in tune and more adapted to the bayou life, and she slowly starts to make friends, and her grandmother starts sharing her the wisdoms and sayings that she learned, and she starts telling her a little bit about the African folklore and especially about Mama Wada. I just really enjoyed this book. Like, I picked it up after seeing Ashley at Bookish Realm talk about this book, and it was just so good. Like, there are mermaids in it, and there's also, a lot of talk about slavery and about, the practices that were brought over from their countries and passed down for generations. There's talk about nature, natural disasters. Maddie ends up meeting a young boy whose name is Bear, and they slowly start to get along. He takes her out to look at things in the bayou, look at alligators. They're searching for Mama Wada. It's just so good, especially towards the end when the big climax happens. Joel Parker Road was really good at writing that. I've cried so much towards the end because it was just so devastating, and it takes just realized that there is a trigger warning for like an environmental disaster that happens, so not necessarily brought on by nature but brought on by humans and how it affects the environment, so just be aware of that. I just really enjoyed Joel Parker Rowe's writing. It's the second book I've read of theirs this year. I love how Maddie becomes attached to like the fireflies that are flying around, how she sits outside, she doesn't miss the convenience of electricity and lights and TVs and stuff. She enjoys spending time with her grandmother, to her saying, and her grandmother's trying so hard to kind of see if any of her daughter's children's are descendants, have received any of the magic that she had, and it's just so good. There's just so much in this book. So it's a fun read, but it's also got some pretty heavy topics, but it's not that heavy. And yeah, so I would definitely give this a shot if you want to read a book about people living in the bayou, life in the bayou with some magical influences and more about African folklore. I would definitely pick up this book. Okay, so that's it for my top 10 books for 2020. If you have read any of these books, please let me know down below. Please also look down in the description for the latest in news and causes that are reported throughout the world. And also for, I'll go ahead and put down Ashley's booktube down there. And also I'll go ahead and put down any links of where else you can find me. Otherwise, thank you for watching and happy reading. Bye!